In the Altai Mountains of western Mongolia, where the steppes meet the sky and the wind carries voices from 1,000 years ago, there's a valley the herders avoid. They call it Humin Kundi, the Valley of Throats. No one grazes their livestock there. No one camps there overnight. No one even speaks its name after dark, because in that valley, something is always singing. And if you listen too closely, you'll never stop. Part 1. The last master Buttar was the greatest throat singer in Mongolia. Kume, throat singing, was in his blood. His grandfather had been a master, his father before him, stretching back through generations of nomadic herders who could imitate the sound of wind, water, wolves, eagles, all from a single human throat. But Buttar was different. He didn't just imitate nature. He could summon it. When he sang of horses, horses would come. When he sang of rain, clouds would gather. When he sang of the eternal sky, Munkatenger, people swore they could see the stars move. By the time he was 40, he'd performed in Ulaanbaatar, Beijing, Moscow. He'd won every competition. He'd been declared a living human treasure by the Mongolian government. But Buttar had a problem. He'd learned every song, mastered every technique, and he was bored. There must be more, he told his wife, Oyun, in their gear on the outskirts of Ulgi. The old songs, the ones the shamans knew before Buddhism came. The songs that could speak to spirits, not just nature. Oyun, practical and worried, shook her head. Those songs were forbidden for a reason. The shamans who sang them either went mad or disappeared. Let the old ways stay buried. I'm not some superstitious herder, Buttar said. I'm an artist. I need to push boundaries. That's when he heard about the Humin Kundi. An old man in the market, selling felt and fermented mare's milk, mentioned it casually, a valley where the ancient shamans used to practice the forbidden songs, where they'd sing to the spirits of the earth, the sky, the underworld, where the last great shaman, Temujin Bo, no relation to Genghis Khan, had gone to sing the Dudlaga Morin Kur, the summoning of the horsehead fiddle, a song so powerful it could call souls back from the dead. What happened to him? Buttar asked. The old man's smile faded. He went into the valley in 1937 during the purges, said he'd prove the old ways were stronger than Stalin's bullets. They found his body 3 weeks later, or what was left of it. What was left? Just his throat, nothing else, like something had taken everything except the part that could sing. Buttar was obsessed from that moment. Part 2. The Valley. Despite Oyun's protests, despite warnings from every elder in Ulgi, Buttar hired a guide and rode into the Altai Mountains. The guide, a young man named Erdane, refused to go past a certain point. I'll wait here, Erdane said, tying his horse to a scraggly tree. 3 days. If you're not back, I leave. Coward, Buttar muttered, but he paid the man and continued alone. The valley revealed itself gradually, a crack in the mountains, narrow and deep, where the sun only touched for an hour at midday. The wind that blew through it made strange sounds, almost like voices, almost like music. Buttar felt a thrill run through him. This was it. This was what he'd been searching for. He set up his jur at the valley's mouth and spent the first day exploring. He found remnants of old camps, fire circles, bones, pieces of felt rotted beyond recognition, and carved into the rock faces, he found symbols. Not writing, exactly. More like musical notation, if musical notation could be carved in spirals and curves that hurt to look at. That night, sitting by his fire, Buttar practiced his throat singing. Standard kume at first, then more complex variations. Kargira, Saigit, Borbang Nadir, cycling through the repertoire. And the valley sang back. At first, he thought it was an echo, but echoes don't harmonize. Echoes don't add new notes that shouldn't exist. Echoes don't sound like they're coming from underground. Buttar stopped singing. The valley continued. It was singing his song, but deeper, older, like his voice was just the surface of something vast and ancient that had been waiting for someone to remind it how to make sound. Buttar sat frozen, listening, as the valley sang his own song back to him for 3 hours straight. When it finally stopped, just before dawn, he was weeping. It was the most beautiful thing he'd ever heard. Part 3. The Learning. The next day, Buttar began his real work. He sang to the valley, and the valley taught him. It taught him harmonics he'd never imagined, notes between notes, sounds that existed in the space where breath became voice. It taught him rhythms that matched no human heartbeat, but seemed to pulse with the earth itself. And it taught him the forbidden song, the Dudlaga Morin Kur. The song had no words, only sounds, deep, resonant, primal. It felt less like singing and more like opening a door in his throat, letting something else speak through him. When he sang it, the air grew cold. The fire dimmed, and Buttar swore he could see shapes gathering at the edge of the darkness, figures that might have been human once, might have been horses, might have been something else entirely. He sang for hours, until his throat was raw and his voice was hoarse. The shapes grew clearer, more solid. They were watching him, waiting. For what? On the third day, Buttar understood. The song wasn't finished. The valley had taught him the beginning and the middle, but not the end, because the end required something he hadn't given yet, a sacrifice. Part 4. The Price. That night, as Buttar sat by his dying fire, a figure emerged from the darkness. It looked like a man, an old man in traditional deal robes with a face carved by decades of wind and sun, but his eyes were hollow, and when he moved, he made no sound. "Temujin Bu," Buttar whispered. The figure nodded. "You're alive?" The figure shook its head, then pointed to its throat. The skin there was translucent, and Buttar could see something inside, something writhing, vibrating, singing silently. "You completed the song," Buttar said. Another nod. "What did it cost you?" Temujin Bu opened his mouth. No words came out, only sound, pure, horrible, beautiful sound. The song, the complete song, the Dudlaga Morin Kur in its entirety, and Buttar understood. The song required the singer to give up everything except the song itself. Your body, your memories, your identity, all of it fed into the music until there was nothing left but a throat and the sound it could make. Temujin Bu had become the song, or the song had become him. There was no difference anymore. "Is it worth it?" Buttar asked. Temujin Bu's hollow eyes gleamed. He began to sing. The sound that emerged was beyond anything Buttar had ever heard. It was every beautiful thing he'd ever experienced, distilled into pure audio. It was the sky at dawn. It was his wife's laughter. It was the first time he'd successfully performed kume as a child. It was perfection. Buttar wept. He wanted that. He wanted to be that. He wanted to sing that song more than he'd ever wanted anything in his life. "Teach me," he begged. Temujin Bu smiled, or the thing that had been Temujin Bu smiled, and began the lesson. Part 5. The Transformation. Erdine waited 3 days at the valley's edge. On the 4th day, he packed his things to leave. That's when he heard it, singing, coming from the valley. Not one voice, 2 voices, harmonizing in a way that made his bones ache and his teeth hurt. Against every instinct, Erdine rode into the valley. He found Buttar's gur. The fire was out, the supplies were untouched, and in the center of the camp, Buttar was standing, his head tilted back, his mouth open, singing. But something was wrong. Buttar's body was fading, not disappearing, fading, becoming translucent, like smoke or mist. His clothes had fallen to the ground, his flesh was becoming air, but his throat was solid, vivid, pulsing with inner light. "Buttar!" Erdine shouted, Buttar's eyes were open but unseeing. The song continued, uninterrupted. Erdini ran forward and grabbed him. His hands passed through Buttar's arms like they were made of fog. Only the throat was solid. Only the throat was real. "Stop singing," Erdine begged. "You're disappearing." But Buttar couldn't stop, or wouldn't. The song had taken him, and he was feeding himself into it willingly, joyfully, every atom of his being converting into sound. Erdine watched in horror as Buttar's legs faded completely, then his torso, then his arms, then his head, his face, his features, everything dissolving into the air until only the throat remained, floating impossibly, still singing. And then it wasn't alone. Another throat appeared beside it, older, more weathered. Temujin Bo's throat, Erdina realized, still singing after 80 years. The two throats harmonized, their song weaving together, creating something that made the earth shake and the sky darken. Erdine ran. He rode his horse until it collapsed from exhaustion, then continued on foot. He didn't stop until he reached Olgi 2 days later, delirious and babbling about floating throats and men who became music. Part 6. The Valley Sings. Oyun refused to believe it at first, but when weeks passed and Buttar didn't return, she knew. She'd always known, really. From the moment he'd mentioned the forbidden songs, she'd known how it would end. She went to the valley once, just to the edge, where Erdine had waited. She could hear them singing, multiple voices now, harmonizing in patterns that shouldn't exist. The song was complete, the Dudlaga Morin Kur in all its terrible perfection. "Buttar," she called into the valley. "Can you hear me?" The singing paused for just a moment, then resumed, but one voice sang differently, a melody that sounded like her name, like "I'm sorry," like "I love you," all woven into the ancient harmonics. Oyun wept, then she turned and left. She never went back. Epilogue. The collection that was 15 years ago. Now herders report that the singing in Homin Kundi has grown more complex. More voices, more harmonies. A famous musician from Ulaanbaatar disappeared there 5 years ago. A Japanese ethnomusicologist 3 years ago. A Russian throat-singing student last year. All of them searching for the ultimate song. All of them finding it. The valley is collecting singers, building a choir, creating something that might be the most beautiful sound ever produced, or might be the most terrible, or might be both. Local shamans say the song is almost complete, that when enough voices join the choir, when the harmonics reach critical mass, the Dudlaga Morin Kur will fulfill its true purpose. It will summon something, not spirits, not horses, not the dead, something older, something that existed before names, before language, before humans learned to make any sound at all. The first sound, the original voice, the song that sang the world into existence. And when that happens, the shamans say, reality will remember how to sing itself back into nothing. Final words. In the Altai Mountains of Western Mongolia, where the steppes meet the sky and the wind carries voices from 1,000 years ago, there's a valley the herders avoid. They call it Homin Kundi, the Valley of Throats. Sometimes, on clear nights, you can hear it from miles away. The most beautiful, terrible, perfect singing you'll ever hear. And if you're a singer, if you've ever stood on stage and felt that electric moment when your voice does something impossible, something transcendent, you might feel the pull, the urge to find that valley, to add your voice to the choir, to become part of the song. But remember, the song is hungry, the song is patient, and the song never ends. It just keeps adding voices, one throat at a time.
Like, share, and subscribe.